Welcome, Ram fans, to the latest edition of Swollapalooza Thursday, Crackers College Hoops. I'm Steve Ivey, your host, and I've got a great show lined up. I've managed to line up a young man who I think is as good as it comes when it comes to content creation for CSU athletics, embroiled now in a lot of football stuff, but obviously to get going with basketball. And we're going to bring on Justin Michael a little bit to talk about not just Pac-12, latest goings on in Pac-12, but also to talk about the upcoming season for CSU men's basketball. And then I'm going to bring on a guest that from a Gonzaga content creator as well, just for a few minutes to talk about Gonzaga coming to the Pac-12. So it should be a full show, and I also have a little clip with Coach Medved as well. So with that in mind, let me just take care of a couple of housekeeping things. I'd appreciate it if you guys, as you know, the kind of the fuel behind any content creation on YouTube is for subscribers. And we're gradually building the channel. I'm really trying to build a community and, of Ram fans. This is a channel that I basically run, but it's for all of us. And so the more people that subscribe, the more people I can bring on, the more people we reach. It just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So please subscribe if you can. Second thing I just wanted to mention is I'm broadcasting live from Glacier National Park tonight. I found a seat on a lake in Glacier National Park. If you listened to me on Monday, you know that I gave a little bit of a speech about how the best of America can be found in our national parks. And the month of October is a brutal month before a presidential election. I encourage everybody to go to national parks, take some time to get away from the TV and get out into nature. If you have a national park picture that you want to send that you want me to use as a background, I'd love to do it. So if you have a great park photo, send it to crackerscollegehoops@gmail.com and I'll use it in an upcoming show. So that's the housekeeping part. Let's get going. I'm going to bring on the fantastic Justin Michael. Justin, as you know, does work for DNVR Rams. Does a lot of work in terms of writing, in terms of podcasts, in terms of YouTube live shows. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I love the background. I'm a big national parks guy. I actually was out and visited the Grand Mesa National Forest recently, which is one of my personal favorites. So I'm with you. When everything gets tough, get in nature a little bit.
Yeah. So hey, before we get into the main topics, you moved to Fort Collins, right?
I have, yeah. I'm in Fort Collins full time again, which is awesome. It's been a chaotic first couple of months up here. Had a lot going on, but it's just the best. It's a great pace of life. The community up here is so special, and I'm very fortunate to be back.
Does it make it easier for you to do your work given the number of times you got to? Was it more of a convenience thing? I know you spend time in the studio down in Denver, but does it make it easier?
Yeah, it's a lot more convenient. Just from a going to practice standpoint, I can be a lot more present. I'm at a lot more practices, which is good. It's just, a lot less time on I-25 as a whole.
Of course, you moved just in time to deal with the express lane, which is good now, right?
Yeah, it's never ending. I was a freshman in 2013, and that project had already started, and it just kind of moves a little bit more south, like every couple of years.
Yeah, I've referred to it plenty of times as Hickenlooper's Highway from Hell. And it's better than it was, but it still can be brutal. Let's get the festivities of restaurants out of the way. Favorite place to go in Fort Collins now?
Oh man, are we talking like sit down, takeout? Like what's the
anything,
occasion?
Man?
If it's by the amount of times I've been there since I've been back, it's probably Cafe Mexicali, just because it's such a classic. It was my favorite when I was a student, so I'm there quite a bit. But I love all the local staples. That's one of the best parts of being up here is there's just no shortage of good eats.
Yeah, I'm a Cafe Mex. I love the beef burritos there. That's my go-to there. How about you? What's your go-to?
It's kind of hit or miss. It depends on. I'll go smothered burrito a lot of the times, queso a lot of the times. I love their sweet pork and the creamy habanero sauce. I've had just about everything there at one point or another, and I don't think I've ever had a bad order.
Yeah, it's a good place. It was fun last year. I ran into Dallin Holker over a weekend. And I think I sent you a note from it. I didn't want to break the news that he was leaving CSU for the NFL draft, but I ran into him and his wife Tay, and he mentioned he was moving back to Lehigh to start working out, moving back to Lehigh, and he didn't identify who he was, but it was pretty funny because I knew who he was, and I knew that meant he wasn't coming back to CSU. I think you already knew at the time, though.
Boots on the ground journalism. That's what it's all about. That's why it's better for me to be back in Fort Collins. You never know. The first weekend I was back up here, I ran into Coach Cooley at the liquor store. So it's just one of those, like, it always helps to be in town.
So cool. I'm so excited. It's going to be a fun year, fun getting back together. We need to get together. I've been meaning, it's been kind of a crazy summer. I mean, I want to have you over for dinner sometime. So we'll do that. We'll figure out a way to have you over sometime in the near future. Okay. How's that sound?
Anytime.
All righty. So let's get going. Let's just start talking. Let's talk Pac-12, and just I want a kind of a 30,000-foot overview. I want to start with what was you're a CSU graduate. What was your first reaction that Thursday morning when the announcement came out that CSU, along with 3 other teams, were going to be joining the Pac-12? What was your absolute first response?
Probably a combination of excitement and also relief that we were one of the teams that was included in this. I think San Diego State and Boise State have been pretty dead set on leaving for a while now. I mean, we saw that over a decade ago with the Big East move. San Diego State obviously went to the Pac-12 before it fell apart, and now they're back at the Pac-12 again. But I kept coming back to the thought of, what if you were one of these teams that got left behind? And, what if you're sitting here and you're San Jose State or you're Wyoming or you're UNLV? And I know UNLV chose to stick around. They obviously had some options in the end, but I just think it's such a better brand to be affiliated with in the long run. I've been pretty open that I believe in what they're building. I've preached patience, when everybody's freaked out regarding some of the moves and, oh man, are they out? Is it done? And I know we're going to get into all of that stuff, but just excitement, because I think Ram fans have wanted something new for a long time. And that's not to say that the Mountain West isn't fun, particularly on the basketball side. I think it's probably more bittersweet than the football side. I'll, be disappointed to not have the pit necessarily every single year, or, some of these brands, but I'm really excited. And especially with Gonzaga on board, I think the future of this league is quite bright.
The thing I remember last year, I can't remember who said something or maybe posted it on X, but they talked about, we're having such a great year in the Mountain West. Let's figure out a way to build make the Mountain West the Big East of the West. And I had a pretty strong response in a negative way to that. Not that I didn't want to see us as good as the Big East, but I said, you're going to have to shed teams to be able to do that, right? It was obvious. You've got a San Jose State that barely invests any money in basketball. Thank God they have Tim Miles as a head coach, because I don't think their program would be worth a darn. They have no money. Fresno's been struggling, but we've seen some success in the past from them. And then Air Force is in the new era with NIL and easy transfers and all this and that. They are up against the wall in terms of ever being able to compete in the Mountain West. And so you start looking at teams that are 200 plus net ranking, and you can't build a Big East out of 200 plus net ranking things. And so, when I saw the announcement, it was a step in the right direction to really building what could become a power basketball conference. Obviously, football pays the bills, as everybody says. It drives the bus. But I am so encouraged by the foresight of the people that have put the 4 teams to start with, bring in Utah State and now Gonzaga, to actually look at basketball as an important strategic component and not an afterthought.
I think it's a bit of an untapped market. And I think in particular with some of the movement that's going to happen with some of the media deal opportunities being one of the few premier, conferences on the market at the time. Obviously, you're kind of competing with the Mountain West at the moment, but I think clearly this is the more desirable league. You just saw somebody like Turner Sports invest a bunch of money in the Big East. I think it would make a lot of sense that they would also be interested in a West Coast college basketball product. They've got a lot of content to fill without the NBA. So I really think Turner Sports could be a factor. Obviously, the streaming options, but I love college basketball. I personally enjoy covering college basketball more than I enjoy covering college football. A lot of that probably has to do with the success of the program since I've covered the teams. It's been kind of night and day between basketball and football, but I just think people overlook it. And I think in particular, when you add a program like Gonzaga, it changes the equation. There was so much of an emphasis for, oh, they have to get UNLV. UNLV football is a program that ranks in the hundreds in TV viewership, and they're now the flagship program of the Mountain West. Now, that's not to say that there's not some value there, but adding a team like Gonzaga, it's a game changer. And I think it just makes being viewed as that premier West Coast conference much more realistic. And I think it validated the league and what they're building in a major way.
Yeah, this whole Gonzaga thing to me, I the Saturday of the CU CSU game, I actually ran into somebody who said, and I was talking to the person about the 4 teams that had joined, and the person looked at me and said, Gonzaga is in play. I said, really? And the person said, yeah, absolutely, they're in play. And this is before anybody had really reported anything. And then I think the following Monday, Oregon State athletic director Scott Barnes came out and said, oh, we're not looking at any basketball schools. We're just looking at football schools. And that wasn't the information I got. And I thought that was pretty funny because he wasn't I don't know why he was speaking that way, but I don't think he speaks for the Pac-12 conference. I think Teresa Gold does. And I made that very, very clear. And it was obvious they were talking to Gonzaga because when it was rolled out that early in the week. And I'm trying to remember who was it? Was it McMurphy that did it with ESPN?
It was McMurphy who broke it initially. I think he's the Action Network now, but yeah, it was McMurphy.
Yeah. So he broke it, and then Gonzaga immediately, the athletic director immediately denied that anything was in the works.
But it wasn't a direct denial. It was that is not proper, or that is incorrect reporting, which was basically just saying like, we haven't technically signed yet. And McMurphy, he tripled down on his report. And I know, like, I am one of these people that thinks, journalism is important in the timing of things, but I did think it was kind of funny that so many people, took the chance to take a shot at McMurphy. And well, 8 days later, he was spot on.
Yeah, I think, and I like I said, I had information that said it was coming. I didn't know when it would come, and I actually thought it might wait a little bit. I thought that they'd focus a little more on football, but this announcement that came on Tuesday, it is, as you already referred to, it's a game changer. It's huge.
It's so validating, and I think obviously they've got to round out some things on the football side, but I think it opens up a whole world of interesting possibilities between exploring, Grand Canyon and potentially a school like GCU, which I know optically, I think there's some debate there, with them being a for-profit university. Do they really fit the traditional Pac-12 brand? That said, if the goal is we're just trying to build, essentially the 4th best basketball conference in the country, which I think is potentially in play, adding those types of programs that are highly invested in college basketball is smart. And, there's always going to be late night windows, and the more programs you have on the West Coast and having a strong presence, throughout the Pacific Northwest and really that whole region, I think that's going to be a huge selling point for this Pac-12.
You referred to the 4th best conference, 4th best basketball conference. Somebody pulled together a chart with the average net rankings last year of the what the new Pac-12, the 7 teams currently in excuse me, the 8 teams in the Pac-12, and they would be the 4th best conference, right behind the Southeastern, right ahead of the Atlantic Coast Conference, and ahead of the Big East. So just an amazing, conference, and that's with Fresno and Oregon State being very, very low, which we know Oregon State went to an Elite 8 back in 2021. We know Fresno was good back in the 2015, 2016 when Rodney Terry was there. So they have a chance to bring the program up, and lo and behold, you've got a conference that right now on paper could be the 4th best conference.
And I mean, imagine what happens if you get Memphis on board, or like people are talking about the possibility of UConn, which feels less likely to me, but I just think there's a really high ceiling for what this basketball conference can be. And there's so much focus from the naysayers about, well, it's not going to be viewed as a power conference. It's not going to be viewed as a power conference. Maybe not on the football side. I think it very clearly will be that next best league, whatever you want to call it. That's semantics to me. They will have access to the college football playoff. But when you talk about finding ways to make your brand relevant, leaning into basketball in a major way is a way that the Pac-12 can create extra revenue for itself. Because its football brands are not necessarily as valuable as USC and UCLA and some of these old schools. But it would be a significantly better basketball league. And in particular, now that you have Gonzaga, I think it opens up a whole world of possibilities from a viewership standpoint. It's going to be great for attendance at all these schools. And I think it just makes you so much more desirable from a TV standpoint, from a future conference mate standpoint. Who knows what's going to happen in the future with leagues like the ACC and all that. I think if you're a Cal Berkeley, for instance, all of a sudden, like, okay, maybe we could wrap our heads around being in this iteration of the Pac-12. What could happen with schools like, Arizona State, who reportedly, weren't necessarily dead set on leaving anyways. I mean, I just think there's going to be more movement in the future. They're positioning themselves to be in a really good spot, to be lean, but to be competitive and to be intriguing. And that's the best I think that we could ask for.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to talk about something that came out on Wednesday from a very credible reporter, Dick Weiss, who talked about Memphis and the Pac-12 remaining in ongoing discussions. Where are you at with Memphis?
I think they're the best full sports member that we could add from a basketball and football standpoint. I think there are options like regionally that make sense. If you're really trying to focus on shortening travel or getting into Texas or something like that. But I think out of the options that you have, on top of what it would do to the AAC and kind of further cementing like this as the 5th best football league, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree. I've been big on Memphis all along. And I really hope that they can get that deal done and get that over the top as the next full member with both football, and I am huge on them in terms of basketball. And so hey, Joel Cantalamessa threw out that little comment before about Creighton. Thoughts on Creighton?
Oh, I'd love it. I mean, if you could talk them out of the Big East, I mean, it would make a ton of sense. Obviously, you'd have great travel opportunities from, people like coming from Colorado, for instance. And I think those CSU Creighton matchups have been some of the more intriguing and fun. Obviously, it's helped with how they played out on CSU's side. But if you could play Creighton and have them in this league, that'd be incredible. I do wonder if they would be truly open to it. They're in a really good spot in the Big East, but I do think having schools like Gonzaga makes that much more realistic.
I think it's a long shot. I don't see why they'd leave the Big East. I think it's a wonderful thought, and I'd love to see it. And especially since we've beaten them pretty good twice in the last few years.
Let's keep playing them.
Yeah, bring them on, and then yeah. But the other thing, who, so you get, even if you can get Memphis, that gets you to 8. The ideal number is probably 9. You want to have 8. You want to be able to have 8 conference games, I think, in the kind of the latest configuration, 4 non-conference, 8 conference. And then I think, if you can get to 9 and then you have Gonzaga as your 10th member, you got a minimum of 18 conference games. I think you'd like to get 8 to 18 and maybe to 20. I know it's getting harder and harder to schedule non-conference games, although Gonzaga may have a little different theory on that. And San Diego State certainly had a different theory about going from 18 to 20. But who are your thoughts of, if you can get Memphis, who are your thoughts of who the next football program might be?
I mean, if you could somehow swing like a UConn as a full sports member, again, just because of what they bring from a validating your basketball product and raising your profile nationally, then I could wrap my head around having the additional costs for all the other sports, because like Gonzaga, they are just that special as a basketball program, and it'd be kind of a necessary evil to take on the travel everywhere else. But outside of them, I think you're probably looking at the best of the AAC, whether that's UTSA, whether that's Tulane. It sounds like is probably the most likely. I know it's a really good school. To me, Tulane is a lot like UNLV, where it's you're selling a city that's really big and really exciting and that people want to go to. It's also a city full of people that don't care about Tulane. So I don't really know what you're gaining from a local support standpoint there. I don't love the added travel of South Florida, but I think they make sense. But I guess Tulane would be my top option, or maybe like a Texas State.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on Tulane. I'm not a big fan of Texas State. I'd love to see Memphis and then
feels like a pretty big
Tulane and
for a school
call
like
it a day, or maybe just Memphis to start and hang out, and maybe hope that Cal figures out a way to get smart and comes back.
I'm a proponent of being lean. I do think that's a big problem the AAC has right now, and it was what I think was a big factor in why the reverse merger with the Mountain West never came to fruition. I don't think these leagues necessarily, unless you're the SEC and you have all these top brands, but I think if you're a mid-major league, I don't think you want to be at 14, at 16 teams. It's why, or part of why, the WAC broke up and the Mountain West formed in the first place. But when you start having more mouths to feed that don't bring more to the table, it just doesn't make a ton of sense strategically. And I think I think you bank on the fact that there's probably more movement down the line, and that if you can build up and legitimize the reputation of this new version of the Pac-12, maybe you're an appealing landing spot for, like you said, a Cal or anybody.
I hear you. Hey, I wanted to bring one more little clip on something I saw on social media from this week, and we don't have to talk much about it, but it was Navigate assisting the Pac-12 with trying to secure a private equity firm to support the conference in their realignment efforts. But it hinges on getting to 10 full-time members. 9 football is acceptable. What do you know about this private equity stuff? Do you know much about it, or you just think it's just kind of people throwing out ideas right now?
I know for a fact that all these schools are certainly exploring it. They're, I think it's an intriguing option for a lot of different reasons. I mean, obviously, it's basically an arms race in college athletics today. So all these schools are going to do whatever they can to help that. I also think there's probably some substantial risk, and there's a lot. I'd have a ton of questions of what exactly does that mean from a stake standpoint. Typically when there's, and I'm certainly a fish out of water when I'm talking about business, but I assume if you have private equity involved, there's going to be certain demands in terms of what those returns are going to be, and what does that look like, and what does that do to an already very complicated and at times pretty dirty business in college athletics. I'd have a lot of reservations about it, but I will say I feel like somebody's going to do it at some point, and it would probably make a lot of sense if you were the Pac-12. And I think that same thread, it said like they'd be hoping to get like 18 to 20 million, which would obviously be like 4 times what you're currently getting from your media deal. So if you're any of these schools and you hear those numbers, like I imagine it becomes kind of a cartoon scenario where you have like the eyes start popping out, you know?
I've done a little bit of reading on it. It's actually kind of some interesting concepts. I'm not sure how far along they are, but the whole concept of private equity, you could technically borrow money. CSU could borrow money just like they did to build a stadium. And then you're issuing bonds and you're paying interest. And a lot of these big capital firms are less interested now in getting in buying bonds and getting 5 or 6 or 7% interest. They're more interested in asset appreciation and buying organizations. And if you're looking at asset appreciation, you would basically have to what assets do you really have in an athletic department other than a stadium? Are you going to sell the stadium? And so that's a legitimate thing. Some people want to go out and buy stadiums because if they get access to the stadium, if they have approval from the local community in terms of having concerts and things, they can all of a sudden start generating more revenue, and then the asset becomes more valuable, the stadium itself. The other thing I read, which was really interesting, was you could start seeing maybe people considering athletic departments as startups where venture capital come in and you issue different classes of stock and different voting stock, and boosters become stock owners. And if athletes become employees, you can issue stock options. And there's all kinds of creative things. And I just thought I'd throw that out there. It's actually going to be fun over the next few years. I'm excited to see what happens there. It's going to get crazy. You're right about the arms race. It's absolutely nuts. So let's stop it right there, and let's move on. We're not finished with talking about Gonzaga. First thing I want to do, I had a chance to touch bases with Niko Medved, and I'm going to bring on a clip of Niko and his thoughts on Gonzaga. So let's do that. So I'm joined today by Coach Niko Medved. As we know, we got news just yesterday about Gonzaga joining the new Pac-12. And first, a mea culpa. Thanks for Niko for taking an important time out of his day. I screwed up yesterday. I tried to video this after practice yesterday, and we already been through this once. But Niko, thanks for coming on today because of my screw up. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Gonzaga joining the Pac-12 in 2 years.
Well, obviously, with the conference realignment stuff, and really in our industry, things happen fast. This came together really quickly. It's exciting, and again, you're in the season, so you're trying not to look ahead. We got, 2 years of playing in this incredible Mountain West, but boy, looking down the road here and getting to add a program like Gonzaga, which is truly one of the premier brands and premier programs in the country. I think it's phenomenal for our league moving forward. The brand of our league, I think it lifts up everybody else and the excitement around what will be Pac-12 basketball. And so I'm thrilled by it. And again, I think when something like that happens, it should make everybody else better.
That's I'm really looking forward to it as a fan as well. They've been a great program. I've been fortunate enough to see them about 3 different times over the years, all tournament games and the like. But I want to ask you another thing. There's news today about Memphis. You want to talk about anything about not what you may have heard inside, but more, can you imagine if you get not just a Gonzaga, but a Memphis joining the conference? What would that feel like from your perspective?
Yeah, again, I try not to follow the news there, but I clearly, they've been got a great brand basketball wise too. They have a long history of basketball, and I'm looking at it through my lens. If you're looking at through just basketball, I think be a true power league as far as basketball goes, and I think a program like that lifts up the rest of the league as well. So we'll see what happens. I mean, clearly they need to add more programs too from a football playing perspective. And I think a program like that could make sense, but that's above my pay grade. I got enough to worry about with our ball screen defense and you name it.
Anything else I need to ask you about this new Pac-12, or are we pretty much there?
Things are happening in an incredible I mean, the changes are incredible here in college athletics and in our sport, and conference realignment and NIL transfer port. I mean, you name it. But it's exciting. It's really exciting to think about what's ahead and what that could mean for us. But I'm a big proponent of adding a program like Gonzaga. So hats off to those who helped make it happen. And I think it's exciting for the future.
Hey, so that's great. Hey, thanks again for popping on. Obviously, we'll try and check in with you as the season goes on, but I just wanted to touch bases with you. Thanks again. We'll catch you later.
Hey, appreciate you, Steve. Thanks so much.
So that was Nico Medved. Any thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's spot on. It's a move that should elevate all the programs, and there's a lot happening behind the scenes. It's kind of a whirlwind, and I'm sure from a coach's standpoint, it's even crazier trying to think about, what's going to happen down the road, what's currently happening, what you currently are. But man, Steve, you're coming from my spot here. You got Coach on the show. You're going live now. You're stepping all over my turf, man.
No, we're going to make each other. I hopefully will bring more people to you. That's kind of the idea, right? Sharing this stuff.
I'm just joking, man. You do an awesome job. I'm excited
as
a fan.
I
to
hope I can be
hoops.
half as good as you someday. Hey, so let's make a little bit of a transition. I wanted to bring somebody on the show from Gonzaga, and there's a gentleman named Josh who goes by the Zagaholic. Let's bring Josh on. There's Josh. Got any lighting there? Let's see. Anyway,
low lighting in my space.
Low lighting. We're in the basement, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's all good. Hey, welcome to the show. Josh has been a content creator for many years, doing blogging and podcasting, and I want to welcome him to the show. And please give him a shout out, give him a follow on X. We're all in this together. We're all trying to build a community. And he was gracious enough to come on, and I just want to get him to talk about his impressions, and then just give an idea of where Zag fans are with this. So, Josh, welcome to the show. Tell us about your thoughts about Gonzaga coming to the Pac-12 in 2 years.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Gonzaga has been looking for a place to build competition for many years now. Obviously, we flirted with the Mountain West at one point. We've had conversations with the Big East and the Big 12. So to be able to see Gonzaga finally find that next place where we're going to call home is super exciting, not just for, the university, obviously, but the fans, the students. We're, as a fan base, I feel like as a whole, the vast majority of the fan base is really excited about that. Of course, you have your old stalwarts who probably, they felt comfortable in the WCC, but the reality is that the amount of revenue that Gonzaga is going to be able to get from this, as far as growing the program and trickling down to the other Olympic sports that we sponsor, obviously will be a boon to the entire athletic department as a whole. And our fan base is very loud, very, I feel like it's a pretty knowledgeable fan base. We've had to kind of become knowledgeable over the years to defend the program from the various, merciless hordes on Twitter or now X. But I feel like the fan base is also super excited to build new friendships and new rivalries in this new league. Already I've seen, hundreds of new followers on my end, and people, from all over the new Pac-12 that, have reached out and been super gracious and fun to talk to. We have a history of playing Washington State, obviously, many times over the years. We've played San Diego State, a lot of the programs that are coming into this league. A former assistant of Mark Few, Leon Rice, is the head coach at Boise State. So we have connections to leadership throughout the league. So yeah, as a whole, it's a good fit geographically, obviously, and then from a institutional standpoint at this stage in the game, I think everybody has the same goals, building programs up and growing their athletic departments.
Was there disappointment? I know Gonzaga has flirted with the Big East and flirted with the Big 12. Is there disappointment that the Pac-12, the future Pac-12, isn't at that level?
I think ultimately the Big 12 is the golden goose. It's the one in the ether that everyone probably would love to get to as far as basketball is concerned. I think it's probably the best top to bottom basketball league in the country and has been for several years now. And there's some geographical perspective there that would be a little bit better than, say, like the Big East for us. If the Big East was ever going to happen, probably it would have happened a decade ago, because Gonzaga is, fits from every perspective except for geography. But ultimately, I think we're all satisfied with the reality that Gonzaga is taking a step up, regardless of what the perception is nationally of what this new league currently looks like. I feel like there's a lot of brand power here that people don't really yet understand, and that once all these programs are playing together, it's like that saying, what is it? A rising tide raises all ships. It's basically the same philosophy. I think we all can boost each other and grow this league into something pretty special.
So, I know a lot of people, long term, everybody says, well, Gonzaga is not going to be anything when Mark Few retires. And I start laughing when I hear that. Every program goes through major coaching changes. Some places struggle, some don't. I don't think you can predict that that's going to happen. And I think the world of Mark Few, by the way. I go way back. I don't know when you saw your first Gonzaga game. My very first Gonzaga game was 2003. When I saw them play Arizona in Salt Lake City in the second round of the NCAA tournament.
Sure.
And to this day, that was the very best basketball game I have ever seen. I didn't know a lot about Gonzaga. They were, quote, undermanned relative to, NBA players on the Arizona team. Lute Olson with a great reputation. Mark Few, kind of known as an up-and-comer, but not really a household name. And I watched those two teams battle to the greatest double overtime game I've ever seen. And it ended on a Gonzaga player that missed a shot, a 10-foot leaner that he got off of a great play, and everybody thought it was going in, and it missed. And when it missed, Arizona had a 1-point win. 10 players fell to the floor. 15,000 people rose in enjoyment and standing ovation. It was the greatest scene I've ever seen at a college basketball game, because it was such a competitive game and such a thrill. But we saw Few at his best, out coaching Lute Olson, who had guys like Andre Iguodala coming off the bench. That's how good they were. So, and that's what I knew. Everybody knew. And I was at the game with a junior college coach from Wyoming, and he said, that guy can really coach. And I said, you're darn right. And we've seen what's happened over the last 20 years. So we know about how good he is. And there's no doubt that, from my perspective, there's no doubt they could replace him. But do you anticipate, like most other big programs, that you'll get a former assistant coming in?
Yeah, Brian Michelson, who's the lead assistant right now, he is currently the coach in waiting for the program. So, when the program does eventually move on, it will have a former player and then a longtime assistant under Mark Few, who's going to be in place there. And to just speak a little bit on the reality of a Hall of Fame and legendary coach leaving a program. Obviously, we recently saw that with like Jim Boeheim leaving Syracuse and Mike Krzyzewski leaving Duke, to name a couple. Programs do see legendary coaches go, and then success can actually continue. And in the case of Duke, especially, we see with John Shire, it's, they are recruiting roughly at the same level that they were recruiting at when Coach K was there. And I think that's an exception to the rule in a lot of cases, but it does show that it can happen. And the reality is that Mark Few, his goal was never to build a team and then move on. His goal was to build a program, and that's what he's done. Gonzaga went from being nobody, in the early, I started following the program in about 1993. This program was nothing. at that stage. No NCAA tournaments. There was some bright spots in the 80s with John Stockton, stuff like that. But, ultimately the program had not yet proven anything on the national stage. And then Dan Fitzgerald and Dan Monson and Mark Few just kind of took the program to new heights. And here we are. And, Mark Few has been offered many, many opportunities to leave the program, go to places like UCLA, Arizona, Indiana, and every opportunity he's been presented with, he's turned down. And that speaks to what he felt this program and this region were capable of. So, we as fans are super excited about what he's done. And I still think he's got years in the tank.
That's awesome. I hope so. Go ahead. It would be so much fun to have him come to Moby Arena in Fort Collins. Justin, do you have any questions for Josh?
Yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are from a giving up a control standpoint, because obviously, your situation in the WCC, you're essentially the lead shot caller there. And I still imagine, especially on the basketball standpoint, Gonzaga will have, quite a bit of input in terms of, what are we going to do from a non-conference standpoint? And, how many games we going to play, that type of stuff. But I am just kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? And is that a necessary sacrifice?
Yeah, Gonzaga has had it really good for a long time in the WCC. We've been able to earmark financially the opportunities that we needed to rise up and grow the program from the little engine that could to, what some consider to be one of the top 10 programs in the nation now. And the reality is that control is only it's really just a facade. You can control all you want in a league like that, or in a league like the Mountain West or anywhere. And the reality is that if the power leagues decide to coalesce and kick out the little guys, then you're left standing by the wayside, and there's no opportunity for you to continue to grow the program or grow your revenue or stay on that national stage. So it makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. I believe a lot of Gonzaga fans' opinions as well, that these programs that are in these smaller leagues do kind of merge together and form the best of the best to remain relevant on the national stage. And if you put yourself in the conversation, as the Pac-12, I believe, is trying to do, by being one of the best basketball conferences in the nation, then the leagues that are driven mostly by football, they have to let you have a seat at that table. It's the same story with the Big 12 and what Brett Yormark has kind of strategized over the last couple years. And, he's been identifying the fact that basketball is going to play a major role in the future of college athletics. And he sees it being undervalued and the revenue that's available there. And I think the Pac-12 is taking a page out of his book and just recognizing that there's a lot more to college athletics than just football. And I think that being a top 5 program in the nation allows the Pac-12 to stay relevant with the big boys, if you will.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I've been a big proponent of it from the start. I think Gonzaga coming over to the Pac-12 was not only like a big moment, but a pivotal moment, and one that was necessary for this to all work out, for them to elevate the brand in a way. Because, I mean, clearly, like, it's from a football standpoint, it's not going to be what it was, but it can be a highly competitive football league and a borderline elite basketball league, in particular, like with what could happen down the line if they bring in Memphis. I think it's obviously right there, with the Big East, or, 4th or 5th best league, depending on how you want to frame it most years. But I'm really excited. I got to see Gonzaga for a couple of games in Ball Arena in Denver for the NCAA tournament this, 2 years ago, I think it was. Now I'm mixing up the years of where I've been at the various sites, but I'm stoked, man. Welcome to the league. And I think it's going to be a very exciting future for all of us. And as like college hoops heads, like we are, people that probably enjoy college basketball even more than college football. Like, I think it's a big win for all of us who get told, college basketball doesn't matter. The NCAA tournament's the only thing that matters. No, those people are missing a hell of a lot of good action in November and December.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Josh, thanks for coming on. We're going to move on and talk about CSU basketball. You're welcome to stay if you want to learn, but but you can disappear too if you want. I appreciate you coming on. Don't be a stranger. Let's keep in touch. If anything else comes up, and we can be certain that something else is going to come up, I'd love to have you back on. So thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So before we move on to talk CSU basketball, here we go. Colorado State 3, superhuman, unbeatable San Jose State University 0 in volleyball.
Pulled off the sweep.
They pulled off the sweep. We were laughing before we went on, going up 2-0, how it would probably go 5. They really came through. They won a close third set, but congratulations to Emily Cohan and crew. That is a great win, and there's been a lot of noise about San Jose State. Congratulations to the CSU women. I'm proud of them for competing and not.
You don't win titles
away.
by forfeiting matches.
Yeah, I did a short video today of expressing my disappointment with other programs that have chosen not to compete. And, to me, that's a great step for this for the CSU women's team moving into a tie. They're still in first place, still undefeated at 3-0. So let's talk basketball. Let's talk CSU men's basketball. I just wanted to cover briefly your top storylines. You know, you've been around the program basically since Miles was a little too early for you, right? I mean, you know Miles.
Yeah,
but,
basically the entire U Stacy tenure, and then now, you know, obviously the entire Medved tenure. I was second year of U Stacy, I think second or third. I can't remember. I was there for most of it though, and obviously the end of it I played somewhat of a role in. But the Medved era has been a blast, and honestly, it's kind of a different situation than it's been most years because they've kind of had so many of these program mainstays that they built around. You know, obviously you had the Roddy and Stevens era, and then you kind of have like the Stevens era, and now we're in the Nick Clifford era, which is really cool. I'm so stoked that he's back, but it kind of feels like Utah State almost, where it's, you know, you've got basically an entirely new cast here to build around. I know they've got some key guys coming back as well, but to me, that's kind of the big storyline I'm interested in is, can CSU pull a Utah State and get a entirely new cast and crew to gel quickly and, you know, maybe make a surprise run to the NCAA tournament? I think
we're all kind of on the edge of our seat looking forward to what, we have a lot of faith and a lot of belief in the coaching staff, but you know, the losing Isaiah, obviously, I love the kid, and we had 5 years
basketball
of him.
Player I've ever been around. Certainly,
and just a great guy. But you know, the funny thing is, I had a great little chat with Nico at practice the other day, and he looked and said, you know, you talk about amnesia with Zay. We have amnesia about how he was as a freshman and sophomore as well. There were times when he played some games as a freshman. We remember the good moments where he hits winning jump shots at the buzzer against Nevada. But as Nico said, you know, there are times when he threw the ball into the third row. And
he tried to do a little too much at times. Yeah.
I think back to the COVID year when we were, here, we got to know each other. For people that don't know, we got to really know each other during the COVID year because that's all we had. There were no people at the games. We couldn't talk to the players other than on Zoom meetings. And so we were allowed to talk through masks at each other in the press area. And here we were, we'd be sitting at games. And I can remember watching games where Zay would be going about 100 miles an hour. And lo and behold, the ball go almost to the upper deck, you know. And he
really learned to play at his
too.
pace as it went on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had to learn. And now you're talking about something that I think we're all, and we're gonna see some peaks and some valleys, I think. But I think that's a great storyline. Do you think Nick, Nick was in kind of a, he went from a kind of an afterthought at CU to a important component in a ball sharing offense? Do you see him elevating to the leader of the team?
I do. Yeah, I think Nick has grown a lot as a player and as a person. I think he's matured a ton over the years. And I think going through what he went through at CU, having been, a 4-star prospect that was very highly coveted, on the recruiting cycle, to, like you said, kind of an afterthought, cast off. There's a bunch of clips of, CU podcasts. I'm talking about how they'd be better off without him, and, yada, yada, yada. They got Cody Williams coming in. They didn't need him anymore. And it's honestly one of my favorite stories. And since I've covered CSU athletics, I just think it's so cool to see a guy like Nick come to CSU to find his groove and really grow into, this star player. And I think he benefited greatly from being next to Isaiah Stevens this past season. But I think he's ready to take a larger role in the offense. And I think we saw that in stretches in the Mountain West tournament, in the NCAA tournament as well. He was so good against Virginia, so good against Nevada in that Mountain West tournament. I need to see a little bit more consistency from him. And I do think at times he can try and do a little bit too much. But if he just leans into his strengths and kind of takes a page out of Isaiah's playbook, play at your pace, do what you do well, don't try and do too much, I think he's right there in the conversation for Mountain West Player of the Year.
I agree. I think I actually think he kind of got chipped out of defensive team consideration, and I think he could easily have been the defensive player of the year, and he didn't even make the all defensive team. Nico didn't campaign for him. Alford goes out and campaigns for people. Trey Coleman, and if you look statistically, Nick had a better year in every statistical category than Trey Coleman. And I don't want to say Trey Coleman's a bad player; he's a very good player. But
there was a lot of good defenders, and that's how good
I don't know if you saw who guarded Trey Coleman when we played Nevada. It was Isaiah Stevens, our worst defender. So and Nick drew a lot of good defenders himself. So I think you're absolutely spot on. Taylor sent in a question about Ethan Morton playing some point. I think Nico talked about that today on a RamNation.com podcast. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it gives you something that you don't have with Bowen Bourne and Kyan Evans, which is significant size. I think you're going to see a lot of different lineups, in particularly early on, because they've got a lot of positional versatility, which can, be both a strength, but also a challenge of trying to iron out what truly works for us the best. What can we lean on? But he's, a veteran player, a guy who sees the floor well and has always been a good passer. He wasn't running the floor at Purdue or anything like that, but it's always been considered one of his best strengths. I think it makes a lot of sense for a CSU team that, if you look at some of the teams they've struggled at, especially in the postseason and stuff, it's been bigger, more athletic teams that can kind of bully you. And if you can have a bigger, strong guy in Morton out there and really throw some size at teams, I think it gives CSU a little bit of an option that they just kind of haven't had in the past.
Yeah, good point there about not having a big guard in the past. You look at the guys they've added. They had to add some scoring. We lost a ton of scoring with Isaiah, with Pat, with Joel, and even the Joe Palmer's off the bench. And so they, the Bowen Bournes, the Keyshawn Williams. Those guys are pure scorers, and what's been unclear to me, and I haven't seen enough in practice. What's unclear to me is how good they are in terms of distributing the ball. I think they can make shots in this offense, but can they move the ball properly in this offense? And it's an offense that requires that. And I think Morton, the one thing I've seen out of him, and not a lot, but he's a very versatile player. He's not just a big guy, but he's not gonna knock you dead with his outside shooting, but he can hit the elbow jumper. He can hit the occasional 3-pointer. He can get to the rim. I'm with you on this. It'll be interesting to see if you can field a lineup with Morton at the point, Jalen Lake at the 2, Nick at the 3, Crocker Johnson at the 4, and Mbemba or even Kyle Jorgensen or Nikola Joppa at the 5. You got a pretty big lineup that can be very, very good, I think, at defending the paint. And Nick mentioned something to me too about this team and some of the guys. He thinks they're going to be a very, very good rebounding team, and that kind of size would lend itself to be a very good rebounding team. So, what other things are you looking at this year?
Yeah, just one thing going off what you just said. I think that would be big. You asked me, can Neek be the guy, the leader, especially offensively? If you can take some of the stress off of him defensively and as a rebounder, because I think he accounted for at times like more than half of our rebounds. He was a big part of what they were doing. I think that'd be big just for him on the offensive side, not having to strain so much on that side, but he is still going to be, I think, their best defender. Also, something Morton brings to the table is he's a high level on ball defender, gives you just more size, versatility. I am interested to see you mention Jalen Lake out of the returners, because I think there's going to be a ton of focus on all these new pieces, and as there should be, it's going to be a big factor this year. But out of the guys like Rashawn Bemba and Jalen Lake in particular, who's been just such a selfless teammate over his career, can he elevate enough to really, take this team to the next level? Because you're going to need more guys than just Neat Clifford to elevate for this to work out. And I think being able to lean on the guys that have been in this system before, Bemba and Jalen Lake, making a big leap would be huge. And Lake's had his great moments, obviously. He's got such a gorgeous jump shot. He was so good against CU. He was good in the Mountain West tournament as well. I think him having a big year in kind of almost like a traditional college basketball career, something we don't really see so much these days, of like a guy that flashes early. He kind of has some moments in sophomore and junior year, but he sticks it out, and then he really, it all pays off as a senior. Like I could just see a world in which Jalen Lake is, like a second team all conference player and played a big factor in CSU's success.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. He looks bigger. He looks like he's gotten stronger. He's had injury issues last year, obviously, with the finger and needing surgery the year before. I think he had illness, and then he got a concussion against UNLV, and that set him back. And last year he was playing really, really well coming off the bench, and through the CU game, he was a critical component in that game. And he came back, and we saw flashes, like you said, but a little inconsistent games where he'd miss open shots and games where he'd make all those open shots. And I think if we can get the consistency out of him, I think you'll see him take a leap. How about the new players all the new ones, other than Morton? Who you interested in seeing?
I think Crocker Johnson was a really big addition for this program, and based on the things that I've heard from people in the college basketball world, like if he was in the portal about a week longer, he's probably at a pretty big high major right now, because there aren't a lot of guys with his size and athleticism and versatile skill set. He could stretch the floor for you. You can put him down low, have him post up. I think he has a chance, especially like if he sticks around and develops in this system, to be a really highly productive player, and a guy that really tests you offensively because of how versatile he is and how big and strong he already is.
Yeah, the big and strong part. He doesn't look big until you get up close, and he's 6'8", 230 pounds, and he runs the floor really well. He shoots the ball nicely. I'm excited to see him as well. I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of where he's headed and where he could have gone. We're fortunate to have him. I hope he stays with our program. And I see an all Mountain West Conference player in the future.
I do too.
I really do. The other thing that I've been impressed with, he did. There's some things he did offensively at Little Rock, where he played a little bit with catching the ball up high with his back to the basket, which is very much, a Princeton big kind of sets. And Nico, of course, runs a lot of that stuff. So he's comfortable doing that and setting screens on the perimeter. He's also comfortable. So he's comfortable playing the 5. You could see a small ball lineup with him as the 5, and he's not small, but kind of like what CSU used to do with Roddy. you could see a small ball lineup with Crocker Johnson, and then you go with 4 guards, and you got a team that maybe can run and shoot and score as well. And so guys like Bourne and Keyshawn Williams in a lineup like that might be dynamite. So I'm excited. I think you're spot on Crocker Johnson. Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, off of that, the big question for me is you have so many guys and so many options. Can you get everyone to buy in? Because I think, like, there's going to be certain games where you go big and you lean into that size. And I do think there are times where it would make a lot of sense to have a guy like Crocker Johnson or Bemba playing the 5, and you've got Bourne and Williams and, you know, Lake and Clifford out there, and you really run people off the floor. But there's not going to be enough minutes for all of these guys to play the role that they are desiring and potentially and likely even capable of playing. So can you get them to buy in? And I think that is a big question for the team and a big test for this staff. And like, if you can find a way to get this team to the tournament, I think there's an argument that it's probably the most impressive coaching job we've seen from this staff yet, just given the amount of new pieces.
Yeah, you know, I would agree with that. You know, the other thing, and we haven't even talked about it, I haven't even touched on it, is there's a pretty talented freshman class here. And I think we're going to see, you know, from what I've seen and what I've been hearing, we'll see Kyle Jorgensen is going to play himself into getting legitimate strategic minutes. We're not talking, you know, end of the bench, come in the last minute or two. You're talking about a guy who's going to play an important role at 6'9", 230 pounds, very, very good shooting touch around the basket. He can shoot threes as well, but already picking up things really, really well. Those other kids they're good players. Darnez Slater has a great Division I body already, but I'm not sure how much he's gonna play. I'm not sure he's gonna crack into an 8 or 9 man rotation. Jaden Stepp, who was the high school player of the year in Oregon at 6'8", 225 pounds. Really, really good player, but I'm not sure physically he's ready to play in the Mountain West. He could play at a lower level right away. And then John Mekinen, who's a 6'7", he may be as athletic as anybody on the team from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think I had a coach say he's the most athletic prospect they've brought in so far as a staff, that's saying something when you've had guys like Roddy and Clifford coming in.
Yeah, and you watch him side by side with a guy like Nick Clifford. John's an inch taller than Nick, probably runs every bit as well, if not faster. Has a lot to learn about how to play Division I basketball, but he is you give him a year of seasoning and he is the heir apparent to Nick. And I had Joe Palmer tell me that he's headed toward a defensive, all defensive Mountain West team easily, and could be a defensive player of the year candidate somewhere down the road. So, but I don't know if they're even going to crack into any kind of rotation just because of the experience. I agree with you 100% on this, where this team is headed from, what the coaches need to do. It takes buy-in. It takes coaches that really understand how to fit pieces together. And I think this one might be a little trickier than what we've seen in previous years.
It's just so many moving pieces. And I think that there is a world in which this team is in the NCAA tournament and you see all the talent, like there's definitely a possibility. I think there's going to be peaks and valleys, as you alluded to earlier on. And, you hope that the valleys are not too vast and you get out of them pretty quickly. But it is going to be different. And in some ways, I think that's really exciting because as great as it was to cover Isaiah Stevens for a half decade and have so many of these guys be staples of the program, it's also fun to have like a new group of players to learn about and to see if they can elevate and have, their own moments. And I will say Nick Clifford coming back, just it eases a lot of kind of the worries I probably would have had with this many moving pieces. I think him being back, it'll just be steadying, and in particular, like early on, he's a guy you can lean on as you figure out some of this other stuff.
I hear you on that. I want to mention one thing about Nick. He gets to go back to Boulder for a game this year. I'm
excited.
You'll be there. I'll be there. And I hope the team realizes when they start hearing stuff yelled at him that they come through and they play hard for him and they're ready to play hard for him, because word is that they don't. He's heard some things from them that are not pleasantries. I won't repeat some of the stuff they said, but I think it'll be a fun game. Tickets, by the way, go on sale for that game on Tuesday, October 8th. So for Ram fans out there, figure out a way to get tickets to that game. I know you'll be there. I know I'll be there. I wouldn't miss that for the world. So anyway.
Got to play better than they did last time when they went to
Oh my
Boulder,
God.
sure.
That one's out of my memory. That was painful. That was a 30-point game, and it felt like about a 60-point game. So
there are very few times I've left a game in the Medved era genuinely in disbelief from a negative way, and that game was head scratching, and it was just as head scratching for Nico. I mean, I remember that's one of the few times he was genuinely like, I don't even know what you say about something like that.
So let's end on a positive note. What's coming next for you on DNVR Rams?
I'll be going live tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. So bright and early. If you aren't sick of me yet, I'll be talking more Pac-12 Gonzaga stuff, Mountain West picks. Obviously, lots of football coverage throughout the weekend. But I'll really be ramping up my hoops coverage as well here over the next week or two as we get closer. We're about a month out from the opener, and I can't wait, man. It's great to have you, and more CSU basketball, more college basketball content is good for everyone. So I made a joke earlier, but I do want that to be clear. I think you do incredible work, and I'm
whatever you say, you're always good with me. I want to thank you for coming on. I've been admiring your work for several years. Like I said, we got to know each other during that COVID year. I think you've become not just better and better every year, but become a very, very important component in terms of communicating the whole story for CSU athletics, and CSU should be very proud to call you an alum. So thanks for coming on.
That means a lot,
I appreciate it.
Wow, thank you.
You bet. Let's finish with the important thing, the fight song.
All right, let's do it.
Thanks, Justin.
Have a good night, guys.
We'll see you.